Even if you've saved enough money for retirement, that doesn't mean your retirement is safe. And this is something that surprises a lot of people because most retirees focus almost entirely on how much they've saved. But in reality, retirement problems usually don't come from lack of savings. They come from loose ends, small decisions that were never made, plans that were never written down, assumptions that quietly stopped being true. And today, I want to walk you through 6 loose ends that I see over and over again in retirement planning. All 6 are important, but I'll be honest with you. The last 3 are the most dangerous, and they're the ones that cause the most regret when people look back and say, I wish someone had warned me. So let's start with the first one. Loose end number 1. No plan for long-term care. The first loose end I see all the time is having no plan for long-term care, and I want to be very clear about what I mean here. I don't mean not having long-term care insurance. I mean no plan at all. Most retirees are aware that long-term care is a possibility. They know it exists. They know it's expensive, but they haven't decided how it would actually be handled if it happens. They're just hoping it won't, and that's the problem, because the odds aren't small. A majority of people over age 65 will need some form of long-term care at some point in their lives, and Medicare does not cover it. So when that need shows up, the money has to come from somewhere. In reality, there are only 3 ways long-term care ever gets paid for. First, Medicaid. But Medicaid comes with strict asset limits, limited choices, and reduced control over care decisions. Second, long-term care insurance, which has become much more expensive and much harder to qualify for as people get older. And third, self-insuring, which is how many retirees end up paying for long-term care, whether they plan to or not. Now here's the part people misunderstand. The biggest problem isn't always the cost itself. It's the uncertainty. If long-term care is not modeled into your retirement plan, it can completely disrupt everything else. It can blow up your tax strategy, change how aggressive you should be with Roth conversions, force withdrawals at the worst possible time, and create panic-driven decisions under stress. So no, you don't need a perfect answer, but you do need to make a decision. Leaving long-term care as a giant unanswered question is one of the most dangerous loose ends in retirement. Loose end number 2. Only one spouse understands the plan. The second loose end I see constantly is when only one spouse understands the retirement plan. And if that's the case, the plan is already fragile. Now, I understand how this happens. In most households, one person handles investments, one person tracks taxes, one person understands withdrawals and strategy, and the other spouse trusts that it's being handled. And that works until it doesn't. Because retirement plans often work beautifully right up until the moment the primary planner becomes ill, incapacitated, or passes away, and that's when complexity becomes the enemy. Accounts are scattered, decisions were made years ago, but no one remembers why, and the surviving spouse is forced to learn everything while dealing with grief, stress, and pressure. This is not about intelligence, it's about preparation. A great retirement plan is only great if the person left behind knows how to carry it forward. They don't need to understand it at the same depth, but they do need to know what the plan is trying to accomplish, where income comes from, and who to call for help. If you're the only one who understands how your retirement works, that's a loose end you don't want to leave hanging, and it's one of the most costly mistakes I see. Loose end number 3, using outdated risk assumptions. The third loose end is using outdated risk assumptions. I can't tell you how many retirees I meet who are holding a 60-40 portfolio simply because they think that's what they're supposed to do. For decades, that mix was treated like the default retirement portfolio. But retirement is not the place for rules of thumb. There is no single correct stock-to-bond mix that fits everyone. If your allocation is wrong for your situation, it can hurt you in 2 ways. 1, you take more risk than your income plan can withstand, or 2, you're so conservative that you miss growth you still need. Most people choose an allocation first and hope it works. Target date funds, generic models, set it and forget it. But it should be the opposite. Your investment mix should come from the plan. When you model your spending and income, you should be able to see, in real dollars, how much volatility your plan can absorb. That's your risk capacity, and it's often very different from how aggressive you feel. When risk isn't aligned with the plan, markets stop being a math problem and start being an emotional one, and that leads directly to the next loose end. Loose end number 4. No plan for market downturns. This one is huge. The fourth loose end is having no plan for downturns, just a plan built on hope. On paper, many retirement plans look great, but they're built on average returns, smooth markets, and the hope that nothing goes wrong. Hope that markets cooperate. Hope downturns are short. Hope you never have to sell at the wrong time. But hope isn't a strategy. If your plan requires you to sell investments every month, no matter what the market is doing, then a normal bear market becomes dangerous. This is when people panic. They abandon good plans. They lock in losses they didn't need to take. That's why we use a spending bucket approach. We separate money needed for near-term spending from money meant for long-term growth. For our clients, we typically set aside about 5 years of spending, structured in laddered maturities based on actual needs. Why 5 years? Because historically, most bear markets recover within that window. Since 1950, the average recovery time is about 33 months. 5 years gives breathing room, but the biggest benefit isn't mathematical, it's behavioral. You're not forced to sell growth assets to pay bills. And when markets recover, you refill the bucket intentionally. If your retirement income strategy doesn't change how you spend during downturns, then it's not really a strategy at all. Loose end number 5. No coordinated tax plan. The fifth loose end is tax planning, especially in the early years of retirement. I call this period the golden runway. This is the window where you're retired. Social Security may not have started yet. Required minimum distributions haven't begun. This is where Roth conversions, Social Security timing, and income planning matter most. What you don't want is to reach age 75 and say, I wish I had done something earlier. Because now, RMDs are forcing income, IRMA premiums are locked in, and tax flexibility is gone. Charitable giving is another area. Writing checks instead of using tools like qualified charitable distributions, donor-advised funds, often means paying more tax than necessary for the same generosity. These mistakes don't feel dramatic in the moment, but over time, they compound. A little planning goes a very long way. I go much deeper on this in a video called The Golden Runway, the tax window retirees can't afford to miss. I highly recommend watching that next. Loose end number 6. No written income plan, the most dangerous. And finally, the most dangerous loose end of all. No written income plan. Most retirees know roughly how much they can spend. They've heard the rules: 4%, 4.7%, 3.5%. But knowing how much you can spend is not the same as having an income plan. A real income plan answers questions like, which account should money come from each year? When should Social Security start? How do you handle large one-time expenses? What happens if spending is higher early in retirement? When those decisions are made on paper, you're not guessing, you're following the plan. That's how you spend with confidence instead of fear. If you don't have a written income plan, you should. And if you want help building one, you can schedule a retirement clarity meeting. It's not a sales call, no pressure, just a conversation. Loose ends don't feel dangerous until they are. And the good news is, every single one of these can be addressed with the right planning. Thank you for watching. This is Retirees Consultation. I'm Ms. Griffin, and I'll see you next time.